But that has nothing to do with the conversation. I think you have proven yourself just through your own words that we have no nature, we're not born to live in societies. We're not born to live
That's
alone.
my argument.
We're not.
My argument is that we're not born to live in societies, but we disagree on what societies are. It literally doesn't make sense. Like, all things evolve to fit their surroundings. That is their nature. For you to say that we don't have a nature means that we never evolved.
We don't have that.
But what does that mean when you say that? Like, when you keep saying
they have
no. I need like a definition because I'm not understanding. All right.
Now I can go back in and watch your chat still, can't I?
Yeah, you can still look at chat.
All right. So, human nature. What is our nature?
There's not one thing that is our nature. Like, when we're talking about nature, we're talking about things that are natural, right? We're talking about things that we just do because of the way that we are. And so if we've evolved to be animals in a forest, climbing trees and killing other animals to eat them and to fight against other humans, in tribes and gain territories and take women and crap like that, then I'm saying that our nature is not to exist within a society that has laws and police and, stuff like that. Our nature is to be like any other animal and just exist and do as we please.
Then why do we live in societies?
Because we built them. And we don't have much of a choice now because we're continuously born into them. And that's that.
Why have humans always, the hominid species, why has the hominid species always lived in groups? As far back as we know.
I think we're tribal. Yeah, we are tribal. We like that. That's true. But we also killed other groups and even killed off entire other species of humans.
Okay, so what in that process does makes any of that natural? Any more so than living in the society that we do today?
When you say any of that, any of what?
Living in tribes, living alone, living in caves, living in houses.
We're social animals. Just like any other, like chimpanzee or bonobos or like all other apes, we're all social animals. We depend on one another. And we have different people within our groups take on different roles to do more things. And so, yeah, just being social animals helps us survive.
Do we have to be social animals? Can we live alone?
We can live alone, but it is likely that if we live alone, we will end up with other problems. That like humans that don't feel love and affection and other human connections end up with emotional problems, psychological problems, and are more likely to have more and more issues.
Could that be because that's how we've learned to be? Would we be that way if we had never created those connections?
Yeah, it seems to be the case that like somebody who just grows up in a single parent household thrives for. Sorry?
You have a connection in a single parent household. You have a lot of connections.
You do, but they seem to thrive for that other connection. Like that there's even though they never knew that other connection, they seem to really want that other connection anyways. You're making it sound like, well, they got used to it, so that's why they would want it. But kids who never knew it still wanted it.
What I'm saying here is that these are all choices that we've made as individuals, as species, as families, as this is all something that's been indoctrinated from birth. So we know how we live today because we grew up how we live today. We would not know how to live how cavemen lived because we didn't grow up in that environment. If we grew up by ourselves alone, we would not know how to live in society. So my point is that we have
Well,
no nature
okay,
because we can do all of that and none of it specific to any individual human being.
when you say alone, do you just mean like me and my family alone in a
No,
cabin,
I
or do you
mean
mean me by
alone.
myself?
You by yourself on a deserted island.
Yeah, no, we actually like desire connections. Like, not because we live in a society, not because we got
I,
used to it, because we're social animals just like all of our ancestors have been.
I don't. How do you know that's true? How do you know that if you grew up on a deserted island that you wouldn't just hate other people and do everything you could to stay away from them?
I might, but I would also have other things that we would consider to be problems. Like I would have, so a person who grows up with other people can go off and be alone, but a person who grows up alone cannot then integrate with other people, right? The person who had the healthier upbringing around humans knows how to do both, but the person who's never been around other people cannot do both.
All right. So do you understand what I'm saying here now? Because everything you have just said is wholly dependent on nurture, not at all on nature.
Okay, so kind of. So there's already like, just as humans, we're incapable of just living alone our entire lives.
How could you possibly prove that?
Go put a baby in the forest and find out.
So many other animal species that do live alone, such as leopards, will raise their infant to a certain age, teach them a certain amount of things, and then push them out of the nest and say, have at it. And they will live a solitary life for the vast majority of their life after that.
Yeah, but babies
Why
can't even
couldn't
crawl for like
I,
weeks before they go ahead and starve to death. Like they,
I understand. I understand. So 5, 6 years old, sometime around there, we could probably figure out what plants we could eat. Our parent could probably teach us what plants we could possibly eat and survive off of, where the water sources are, what kind of stuff that we need to do in order to gather food and shelter. And
yeah,
then they
but
can just
even
push us out of the nest at 5 years old, and we're alone,
yeah, but
just like any
so
other species.
when you say this about leopards, that seems to be the like what's common with other animals, but with elephants that's not common. And if you leave an elephant that's still young off by itself, it will starve and die. If you leave a baby leopard seal by itself, it will starve and die. If you leave a baby chimpanzee by itself, it will starve and die. Like, they require, mammals don't just have like a different way of having babies where one is, laying eggs and the other one just pushes it straight out of its own body. It's a completely different system in which we raise our young, where the ones that come out of eggs good and ready to go, and they can hunt and do all of their own stuff. But the ones that don't come out of their own eggs, those are raised by their mothers and fathers. They have to be taught these things. They have to be raised until they're old enough to be capable by themselves. It's, being a mammal is a wholly different process. And so the
All right.
being
First
6 years.
First off, there are mammals that are not that we have mammals that are born in an egg. There are
Sure, of course.
animals. There are animals that are born in an egg that spend a long time with their family members, being taught all sorts of things before they're pushed out of the nest. A lot of birds are that way.
Yes, you're talking
There are
about.
a lot of birds that.
Yes,
Well, my point is that we have no specific nature. We could be any of those things. Yes, you're correct. When you're born, you are helpless and you will die. But if you're taught a certain amount, you could certainly go off on your own and be completely alone. And who knows, maybe be the happiest human being that ever lived.
maybe. Human success seems to have been dependent on the fact that we lived in groups. Like, we were not special We weren't like super capable. We're not big. We're not strong. We're not fast. We can't actually do things very well like other animals. The only reason that we survived is because we did live in packs and we were able to work together.
We're smart and we can eat a whole lot of different things.
Yes, but part of being smart is knowing that we work within groups way better than we do by ourselves. Because by ourselves, we just die. Like every other animal can overpower us.
I don't think that's I don't think that's right. I think that we inherently might know how to make tools. We would certainly be taught how to protect ourselves by a mother of some sort for a certain period of time, how to hide, how to dig a burrow, how to find a cave, whatever. I have this real problem that we have spent human history, human recorded history, trying to define what human nature is. Every single philosopher that has ever existed has based their philosophy on what they think nature is. And not a single one of those philosophers have defined nature in the same way. Not one. So if we can't define what our nature is, how the fuck can we have a nature?
When you're talking about like through philosophy, that's very different than like how we understand our DNA and how we know our ancestors lived over millions of years.
Well, philosophy would be the study of human civilization, human thought process. We can certainly look at anthropology as well for the same things.
Yeah,
No
but we wouldn't
anthropologist
consider
has ever
civilization
defined
to be
human nature
natural.
either.
We wouldn't consider civilization to be natural, and that's why it's
But I
really
think
hard
that's
for
what you were just telling
philosophers.
me.
No, I
I
wasn't.
think
I
you were
was
just
no,
telling me that civilization was natural.
no, I was telling you the opposite. I was telling you that human nature is the fact that we don't live within civilization's natural, like very well, because it's not natural for us to live in a civilization. And so having
Well,
laws,
you
having
said we
rules that
can't
we
live
have to
alone.
abide by, that I don't know why you're going back to that. Right now we're talking about whether or not living in a civilization, like living in a society, is natural for us, where we have laws, we have civilized rules, we have morals, we have all of these other things that are not natural for us, but we socially constructed all of these things for us to
I
abide
don't.
by anyways. That's not natural
I
for
think we.
any of us.
I don't think anything's natural for us. I think we have constructed every single thing that a human being is. I think we have gone outside of the bounds of what human beings, even what our habitat is supposed to be.
Well, obviously, we're outside the bounds of what our habitat's supposed to be. Again, we live in a society. Like, society is the most unnatural thing anything could ever live in.
You can't say that when you said we're societal creatures. We're
I
communal
didn't.
creatures.
Hold on.
You said that
A
we're
society is
communal
not the
creatures.
same as like a tribe, right? A society, like
Why?
people living in teepees out in the forest, is not a society. That's just
Are
a
you
tribe.
serious? Are you
Yes.
serious? It's
Yes.
just a different way of forming a society.
Okay, when
It's
we
the exact
say
same thing.
no, it's not. Like a society is where a bunch of different people are doing their parts so that you can have this, like, each person is like a cog within a massive system where you have an overarching, like, a thing that works for everybody. Whereas in a tribe, you have some people who go and hunt, some people who go and gather, and that's about it. Like, you don't have this, like, a bunch of different roles for everybody. You just got
You have a chief. You have a chief. You have a medicine man. You have mothers that take care of the children. You have mothers and fathers and medicine men that actually create the clothing, that skin the animals. They have systems that run as deep as any system in the United States of America.
So
They
when
have
you
rules.
think people say, like, well, this person's uncivilized, you think they mean that they couldn't live in a tribe with teepees out in the forest, right? Because that's civilized, right? That's civilized society.
I think when somebody says that somebody's uncivilized, they're being hyperbolic and racist.
So
But that has nothing to do with the conversation. I think you have proven yourself just through your own words that we have no nature, we're not born to live in societies. We're not born to live
that's
alone.
my
We're
argument.
not.
My argument is that we're not born to live in societies, but we disagree on what societies are. When I say societies, I am not talking about a bunch of people living in a tribe. I am saying it is natural for us to live in a tribe, just like chimpanzees, just like every other ape. We live in groups, in little tribes, just like literally all apes do. They all seem to do this. We're all the same in this way. We're all social animals. We all depend on each other.
I can't believe that you cannot compare a family of apes or chimpanzees to a neighborhood within inside of a county, within inside of a town, within inside of a state, within inside of a country on the face of the planet. I can't believe that you can't decipher the fact that you are talking about society when you're talking about those animals.
Yeah, I'm just not like the like my neighborhood does not go to war with the neighborhood across from us, and we don't eat each other afterwards. Like, yes, because they were uncivilized. Those were not societies. Like, those were very different.
We too go to war on a regular basis, and we go to war with our neighbors on a regular basis, and we spend a hell of a lot of money and time and energy doing it. I don't think that anything's changed besides the scale, but I don't think that this has anything to do with what human beings are naturally made to do, because I don't think we're naturally made to do anything. I think we decide. I think it depends on where you're born, who you're born to, how you're indoctrinated, what kind of cartoons you watched as a kid. These are all things that define who you are as a human being.
I agree that we're highly malleable.
Everything else that you do is defined by your brainstem.
I agree that we're highly malleable. This is obviously true. Like, nurture, it changes us dramatically. I obviously agree with this. The difference is that all, like, predator DNA, it has this, like, urge to kill and to be violent, and that does not fit within our society. And so when I say that it's unnatural for us to not commit crimes, I'm saying it's unnatural for us to not go hurt people, for us to not get violent, for us to not kill each other. Like, that's what I'm talking about. I will argue
that we're not predators. We have no predator gene in our body. We don't have the claws, we don't have the fangs, we don't have the speed.
That's because we started using
the digestive
tools.
system.
We do have the digestive system. We 100% have the we've eaten meat as long as we've been around. Like, as long as we've existed, we've eaten meat.
That is absolutely not true. As a matter of fact, we couldn't eat meat for the most part until we created fire.
No, we ate raw meat before that. The only reason that we started, the only reason that we started eating cooked meat is because we were burning entire forests at a time, and we started burning a ton of animals that when we would walk through the char of the forest, we would find animals that were burnt to hell, and we would start eating them too, and thought, oh, actually, this is a little bit better, and it's safer. And so they just started eating cooked meat after that, and we slowly...
Hell of a fairy tale.
It is not a fairy tale. This is exactly how it explains it in the books about evolution. Like, go read what is it, Sapiens, where they literally talk about this in the book Sapiens. Like, we've always eaten meat. Chimpanzees all eat meat. Bonobos don't eat meat, but yeah.
I can actually show you anthropological and archaeological studies that show that the earliest hominid species did not eat meat. I can show you that they didn't eat meat, generally speaking, up until the time that we created fire. Let me explain this to you real quick. So first of all, our digestive system is not set up to eat meat. We are not set up to eat meat because we have our digestive system is somewhere in between what a cow is and what a dog is. So the dog has a much shorter digestive system, so it can eat meat raw, and it can eat bad meat with parasites in it, because that meat moves through its system so fast that it's less likely to be affected by any kind of parasite in that meat. So it doesn't have to be cooked, and it doesn't have to be fresh. But our system is much longer than a dog's. So it sits in our system a lot longer, which means we end up dying from foodborne illnesses if we don't cook our meat. A cow is much different. They are herbivores. They have a huge digestive system because it takes a whole long time to process that food for some sort of glucose or energy.
All
So
right.
we
From
sit
what I
somewhere
just
in
looked up,
between.
it says about 790,000 years ago, we found fire, maybe up to 1 million, but over 2 million years ago is the earliest that we know we've been eating meat. And that 1.5 million years ago is when we started to pick the finer parts of the animals that we were going to eat. So
This is something that takes a lot more than Wikipedia to actually solve, and
well,
something that
I'm
I've read a lot
talking
of books
about
on.
the
But
experts that I've read that literally say this and that I've already explained.
okay,
But I know that
I've
there are some hominids that did not eat meat. That is true, but it doesn't seem to be the case that we
Lucy was
have a
one of them, by
straight
the way.
line from them.
Lucy was one of them, by the way.
Okay.
Lucy and all the accoutrement that they found Lucy's bones around with were all made for eating plants, not
Sure,
meat.
but that doesn't mean that
Now,
we necessarily have a straight line from them to us. There are tons of hominids that ate meat, and your claim was that hominids weren't eating meat then. But if instead you want to change it to there were some small groups of hominids that didn't eat meat, I obviously agree with that.
I would say that to start out with, hominids didn't eat meat. I would say at some particular point in time, we did start eating meat, or certain groups did, and then more groups did, and then we figured out that that might be a good food source. So we went ahead and continued doing it because we knew how to make tools. But without tools, it's not like you can walk up into a field and take a bite out of a cow and have any luck doing that. It's just not going to happen. We are not predators. We are not designed to be predators, nor are we designed to eat meat. That's irrelevant to the whole discussion, though. We still have no nature.
That just doesn't make
And
sense.
I know it doesn't
literally
make
doesn't
sense
make
because
sense.
nobody's ever told you this before.
No, even if it literally doesn't make sense. Like, all things evolve to fit their surroundings. That is their nature. For you to say that we don't have a nature means that we never evolved. That is what you would have to say in order to say that we don't have a nature, is that we are just this little nut, like bacteria still swimming in the water.
Evolution has nothing to do with what our nature is. Evolution, if you want to talk about evolution, it's simply about how much hair we have on our body, or what kind of immune system that we build up depending on where we live, stuff like that. This has nothing to do with what our nature is. This is all biological. This is all something that is brainstem down, not brainstem
You're
up.
talking about just within humans. I'm talking about all animals ever only exist because of their surroundings, and their surroundings force them to evolve in certain ways, and that is their nature. Humans evolved from something, and that those other somethings had their own nature, and we changed over time because we had different surroundings that we were adjusting to over and over and over.
A swallowtail butterfly looks like a monarch. It looks like a monarch because of evolution. That is not its nature to look like a monarch. At some point in the past, no, it's not, because at some point in the past,
I don't know what you mean by nature.
At some point in the past, it looked different.
Yes,
it was not created that way. It did not start
how
that way.
It evolved. I literally just said evolving is your nature. Like, that is the nature.
No,
we naturally
no, because
evolved.
It's still a butterfly. It's still a butterfly. It still does the same things that the swallowtail does. It still eats the same food that the swallowtail eats. It does not eat the food that monarchs eat. It just created a situation where it could look like a monarch so that other animals wouldn't eat it, because monarchs feed off of milkweed, which is poisonous to most animals. So this was a specific mutation in a butterfly that is still a butterfly, that still has the same nature that it had in the first place, but only for defensive purposes did it change.
But the defensive purposes are part of its nature. What are you talking about?
No, it's not.
I don't know what you mean by nature then. I don't know what nature means to you. Like, if DNA is not nature, I have no idea what nature is anymore.
Okay, so there are predator species. There are species that are designed to eat meat. We that would be in their nature. So a panther, a jaguar, a mountain lion, all same breed of animal. They're all designed to eat meat. They're all designed to hunt. This is the life that they live. This is the life that they've always lived. This is their nature. That's what's in their nature. We
But
don't have
but
that.
what does that
And
mean
we
when
could
you
go
say that? Like when you keep
because they have
saying
this they have
no,
because they have this
no. I need like a
okay.
definition because I'm not understanding. Like when I say nature, I'm saying something that happens naturally. But you're naming a bunch of things that obviously happen naturally and then saying it's not nature. So I don't know what you mean by nature.
Okay, so when I think about nature, I think about telos, purpose.
Okay.
I think about purpose. What the reason that we're here, the thing that we're supposed to do from birth that is common amongst all of the species.
Okay. All right.
That's what I
So
think of nature.
okay. So just to clarify, when I say nature, I'm saying things that happen naturally. Like I'm saying just things that are taking place naturally, just because that's how nature works. Like our DNA changes over time to adjust to our surroundings and evolves, and that it like all of that happens naturally, so it is our nature. Like that's what I mean by nature, is that it
Well, that
happens
means
naturally.
what you're telling me then is that every single human being on the face of the planet has a nature. They just, every single one of them has a different nature.
Well, so part of our nature is to be highly malleable, in that we're going to adjust our surroundings throughout our own lifetime. So like dogs can do this too, right? Dogs are highly malleable and we can train them. They can change their temperament based on how they're raised. Like they are highly malleable. But alligators are not highly malleable. They are like stuck pretty much just the way that they are. You can't really change them. You can train them, maybe a couple of tricks or something like that, but they're likely going to try to eat you if you give them the chance. Like there's no getting around that. They are not malleable like dogs are. Humans are highly malleable, where we can change dramatically based on our surroundings. That is part of our nature, is to be highly influenced by the other things that are around us.
This started because of Sean, and
Mm-hmm.
I've listened to a lot of Sean, and I wholly think that he's a white supremacist. He's a racist.
I think
Uh,
there's a
I
possibility.
think
I started off the stream talking about like a lot of the things that I
he's
think are super
a
sus
very
about him.
intelligent guy. Yeah, he's a very intelligent guy. He can work around words better than Apolloism for Richard Spencer. He understands how to talk to people and get them to believe what he's saying while passing on racist shit. When he says human nature, I think he means a specific thing. And when you agree that it's part of our nature, I think you're falling into that specific thing that he means for you to fall into.
Well, so if that was, here's the problem. So this is like when I talked to Katie recently, where we were talking about, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but one of the things that I brought up is that if somebody brings up that black people commit crimes at a higher rate, and then the other person is like, no, we don't. They're only saying no, we don't because they don't want to fall into some trap. They don't want to agree to something because they're afraid of some trap. But in the process of trying not to fall into a trap, they've trapped themselves, because now they're just denying something that is blatantly true and is just a fact. But they are afraid of the trap, and so they're just denying things that are true. What he's saying is just true. But I added a lot of other caveats to talk about systemic racism, to talk about the fact that there are problems that cause these things, to talk about the fact that there are other factors surrounding this, so it's not culture alone. Like, I add in all of those other things so that if there was a trap, I wouldn't be caught in it, because I've made it very clear that I'm not just talking about like, race realism or something like that. If that's what he's talking about, I think that's what Sam's trying to get at, and so maybe he'll get at that. There's only like a couple minutes left in this, so probably not. But I think that's what Sam's trying to get at. But in this case, I have watched actual justice warrior a lot as well. He is a highly confusing person where he does seem to give off a lot of the like very shallow cue cards that we would look for if we're trying to decide if somebody's racist. But then the more concrete things, you would at least want like a couple examples of those, and they're just nowhere to be found ever. And so it's hard for me to ever say, I do think he's a white supremacist, but I do say instead, he's pretty sus. He's got some like white nationalistic thingies surrounding him, but I just don't know with him. Like he's kind of an oddball, especially the fact that he hangs out with people like what was the dude's name? I mentioned him earlier, the kangaroo. Atheism is unstoppable. Like that guy is almost definitely a white nationalist. Like I believe wholeheartedly that dude's a white nationalist. But
look, I don't think you're a racist, and I certainly wasn't trying to make that argument. I think that he uses racist arguments, and whether he's trying to be racist or not, yeah, I agree. It's up in the air. He may just have bought into something as well, or maybe he's just presenting facts in such a way that it seems racist. I don't know, but whatever. Either way, I think that when you talk about the people that are committing these violent crimes, and you say that it's just part of their nature, I think we fall into a huge trap there.
Well, he wasn't just talking about black people at the time, though. He was talking about all humans when he said that.
Well, he was talking about the people that were committing those crimes.
No, he was saying that no matter how great of an area you live in, you still will be likely to commit or you still might commit crimes, because that's just human nature. And so I gave the example of like me. I grew up in a nice neighborhood and like had two parents and went to a nice school and all of this crap, and I still ended up going to prison, still committed a lot of crimes, still became a drug addict, still was gang affiliated. Like all of those things still happened, even though I had all of the like best surroundings you could possibly ask for, just because human nature, like we just sometimes we're just gonna be the anomaly there. That seemed to be what he was saying in that example.
See, I don't think so, because I think this entire discussion that he was having with Sam was about who was committing those crimes, and he brings up those big cities for a particular reason, because there's plenty of violent crime in rural communities as well. There always has been. There are rural communities that have just as high murder rates as any urban area in this country. But he doesn't ever talk about those areas. He talks about the big cities because the numbers are much bigger, and because they're perpetrated mostly by minorities, because minorities are the people that mostly live there. And they mostly live there because they were pushed there for a particular reason. So, but he's still trying to back that up into nature instead of nurture. He's trying to back that up into who they are as human beings instead of the situation that they were born into.
Maybe. I didn't hear him bring that up except for when he was talking about all humans. That was the only time that he mentioned human nature. And then when he started talking about specific groups, he started talking about the cultural aspects. And he brought up like Jewish people, Chinese people, and then said that
Chinese are pretty notorious for being criminals, because when we were building the railroads, we created crimes that only Chinese people would do, right?
Yeah,
like
of
eat
course,
dogs or
whatever. Yes, but
so they
but
happen to be larger criminals than all the white people.
That's true, but currently there's crime statistics are just way lower, and they seem to have like a culture that highly values education, that highly stigmatizes crime. And same with Jewish people, like they seem to be very strict and have.
I agree. They all have their own issues though too. They live in ethno-states and they want to live in ethno-states.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, we're talking about Chinese people in America. We're not talking about Chinese people in China. We're talking about Chinese people in America.
They still end up marrying Chinese people.
Yeah,
they still end up living in Chinese communities.
Yeah, sure. But like that is part of what he's talking about, is like if they didn't live in Chinese communities, we wouldn't be able to call it Chinese culture then, because then it would just be American culture, right? Yeah. Same with Jewish people. Well, it's like we wouldn't be able to say it's Jewish culture if they all didn't live.
I think through the history of the United
culture.
States, I think that we've done this with Irish people and Chinese people and Germans and Austrians, and depending on which wave was coming at that particular point in time, we ostracized them. We made them the others, and we created legislation to make sure that they were criminals, and then we called them criminals and dehumanized them in such a way. We are notorious for doing this, and this is exactly what we're doing right now too. We created the situation that they were born into, and then we have called them unhuman because of the violent crime that they commit, knowing that the situation we put them in would lead to that.
That's fine, but that doesn't actually help the situation that they're in right now. Like right now, the situation that they're in, they would actually have to make cultural changes in order to get out of that.
But you know what would make it a lot easier to make cultural changes is to get rid of the projects and to make sure that their textbooks aren't 10 years old and have been used by, they have to share them between 6 different students. That would change it. That's how it's going to change. But we're not looking at those projects.
Like they're asking for like more projects. They want like more government housing and more areas where they're that are affordable for them to live in. Yet we're supposed to be getting rid of that at the same time.
No, there's a difference between projects and a condo complex. Right.
In technicality, sure, but like in theory, there's no reason to believe that they would actually turn out any differently because it's low income housing. And so we're going, especially when we're blaming a lot of the problems that they have on poverty, we're likely just continuously pushing everybody into a place where they're going to keep having the same issues, and spreading it out. Like that's a great idea, but that only hurts a ton of other people instead. So it is kind of incumbent for us to start pushing for cultural changes while also making systemic changes, because if we just make the systemic changes, it's not going to help any if there's not cultural changes at the same time.
Well, I don't think the cultural changes are possible until we make systemic changes. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that that's true.
Well, I think if you legalize drugs, you take a lot of the problems away to start out with.
Yeah, sure, but we can look at tons of other communities that did do this, like Italians. They had crime-ridden neighborhoods, and they did make tons of cultural changes. We can look at the Irish people. We can look at Jewish people coming out of the Holocaust. Like, there are tons of people who had issues with poverty, who had systemic issues, who had issues with criminality, and they did make tons of other changes. And it seemed to work, but obviously the issue with African Americans is so radically different that it takes a lot more. It's just not, it can never be one or the other. And I think that people who are ever focusing on just one and not the other are always going to have a flawed system. It would just always have to be both. Like it just kind of does.
I just think that one comes with the other. I think the other has to start first. It's like a housing first project. I think you have to put somebody in a house to get them off the streets before you can find them a job.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I just think that's the way it works. But I know this is completely off of where we started, and I'd love to talk about philosophy because I have all sorts of whack job ideas about how things work. But
okay.
But I just wanted to jump on and talk to you about nature and the fact that I don't think we have a nature, and I don't know if anybody else in chat agrees or anybody else that'll watch this agrees with me or not.
Well, I think the issue is that you're using nature very differently than anybody else.
Than
like
you. No, then you are.
No, not me. What I'm calling nature is like by definition what nature is. Like I can look it up in any dictionary and it'll agree with what I'm saying.
That's absolutely incorrect, because what you're saying is that every human being on the face of the planet has a different nature. Because we all have different DNA, because we've all evolved to be different things. We all have different immune systems. We all eat different food. We all drive different roads or don't drive at all.
No, that just means that we're malleable. You're just saying that, again, I said that like it is within our DNA to be highly malleable. No, it doesn't.
That means we don't have the same nature.
If our nature is to be malleable, then that does not mean that we have the different nature. Means we all have the same nature.
I'll give you a homework assignment then. Why don't you? I would like for you to define what human nature is with specifics.
Well, again, you're asking for like a philosophical nature, and I'm not. I'm talking about evolutionary nature. Like
well, yeah, because you can apply that to anything.
That's the point.
There's no meaning. There's no meaning behind that.
Well, I don't care about the meaning. I care about like the scientific approach to it. The philosophical approach is totally socially constructed, and meaning is socially constructed, and the value is socially constructed. And so I don't care about any of those things because they're not really scientific.
This is the problem. Everybody says it's just human nature, but nobody knows what the hell human nature is. So they
it does if we're talking about science. But not if we're talking about philosophy. I agree. If we're talking about philosophy, yeah, we have no idea what we're talking about. But if we're talking about science, yeah, we know what we're talking about.
All right, I'll let you finish watching.
All right. Appreciate you jumping on.
Thanks for letting me.
Later. All right. We only got a couple minutes left.